helicopter just got shot down with 16 on board. You know, a couple of days in, I look up and I see the Hero WOD board, and I see Murph. He would do a mile run, he would do 100 pull-ups, 200 push-ups, and 300 squats, and then run another mile.
Josh, welcome to the Jedburgh podcast.
Thanks for having me.
So the finals have begun here at Sandlot Jacks 2023. The GORUCK Games have moved on location here at Sandlot Village. The first round just went on not too far behind us on the other side of the field, and it was not even the beginning of the carnage. Okay, right. It was an overhead hold. If they faced each other face to face, single arm first.
Yeah.
Okay, and it was a 53-pound sandbag, kettlebell sandbag, up over the head. If they failed, they were out. If they made it to 2 minutes, they went to an 80-pound ball, two-hand hold. And if they made it to 2 minutes collectively, then they went to a 100-pound ball. So they've whittled it down now to the next, I think they're at four men, 4 women. And they've moved over here behind us, and we have readjusted ourselves here so that we can see the action. So we're going to talk about your story. We're going to talk about the Murph.
Right.
And Operation Redwings and your involvement there and what you're doing for the Michael Murphy Foundation and everything that happens around what has become a movement on Memorial Day.
Yep, absolutely.
But in the background, we need to set the scene because stage 2 of the finals is occurring behind us, and there is now, imagine a ring of sandbags has been established. On opposite ends of that ring have been placed a dummy knife on one side and a dummy pistol on the other side. Let's
and
call
hold on,
them.
Diameter of the circle is like 25 feet?
I'd say, about 25 feet. And we're going to call them a weapon system. And so now what has to happen is these two athletes are going to be in the center, I believe, and they're going to yell, "Go." And the athletes have to identify a weapon system, get to it, and then, in the words of the GORUCK cadre, take care of business. There are submissions are allowed. I do not believe strikes are allowed, but submission holds are allowed. I think they tap out or they get choked out.
I think they're doing the fist wrap with the resin and the broken glass.
Yeah, that's going to be next.
Style. Not really.
So this is about to get wild. This is about to get wild, and this is fitting. Okay, so we could ask ourselves, why are we going to have this conversation right now with this going on behind us? And the real reason is because we want to talk about pain. We want to talk about suffering. We want to talk about honoring hard work and those who've made the ultimate sacrifice. We talk about Murph.
Right.
And we talk about Lieutenant Michael Murphy, who was killed in Afghanistan. So you were on the rescue operation for Michael Murphy.
Right. Absolutely
Emotional event on so many levels, and defining event in our war in Afghanistan. But talk about your role.
So I was a pararescue specialist. I was the team leader on the helicopter that picked up Marcus Luttrell initially. And that rescue happened 4 days after they were inserted. So they went in on June 28th and pretty quickly came under enemy fire, and called for immediate rescue. And so they called a quick reaction team, the Night Stalkers, and a 8-man SEAL team initially flew in the middle of the day. And then as they were deploying the SEALs out the back, they took a rocket-propelled grenade.
Redwings 2, Operation Redwings 2.
Right up the back of the ramp of the Chinook and slammed them into the side of the mountain, killing all 16 on board. And then that's when we got involved. We were actually in Kandahar at the time. We were stationed out of there, and literally it was the last few days of my rotation, and I was packing my gear. I had just graduated from medical school, and I was, that's a whole nother story, how I ended up being Master Sergeant Josh Appel, MD, the only enlisted medical doctor in the entire armed services, I believe. But I was getting ready to go back and start my internship And we got called into the jock, and they said, hey, helicopter just got shot down with 16 on board. We need you guys to go get them. And so it was like, pull all your stuff out, put your gear on, get back in the game. And we flew up north to Bagram Air Force Base. And there we were briefed that the helicopter that was shot down was part of a rescue force, in fact. And they were trying to get this still unaccounted for 4-man SEAL team out. And so now it was our job to go get them. And so the mission changed, en route. And we searched, we flew through the Hindu Kush all night, looking for any signs, trying to pick up radio chatter, strobes, anything, any signs of life, and we weren't finding anything. And we did that for 4 days. And after 4 days, you kind of start to lose hope, and the chance of survival diminishes. The further out you go, and we knew that they had taken heavy enemy fire, and they were basically ambushed. And so we were kind of starting to wonder how we were going to wrap this up. And then on the 2nd of July, a village elder, Afghani elder, delivered this note to the Air Force Base. And it was from Petty Officer Marcus Luttrell, and it read, I'm injured, I'm being cared for by this Afghani village, but Taliban's closing in, and I need help. And so we figured out how we were going to do that. We were going to go in at night, because I think that was one of the issues, was the first team went in during the day, and there's no cover in darkness. And back then the Afghani, or the Taliban didn't have night vision goggles. I think they've got some nice ones now.
They have our night vision.
Yeah, right.
Helicopters.
And so our philosophy was go in light and go in fast and be undetected. And so we stripped everything off of that helicopter that we did not absolutely need. And we talked about it and ultimately agreed that we would take our miniguns off, like all the ammo, just because it's so heavy.
Yeah.
And then we went back and forth, but ultimately we stripped out all of the Kevlar floorboards, because they were heavy, right? They're bulletproof, but they weighed us down, and so we really wanted to just be as agile as possible. So we launched, at night, when it got dark, and we had A-10 gunship support, AC-130 gunship as well on scene on what at that time was the biggest.
And wait, how many of you guys were there now?
So there were 2 helicopters, 2 Air Force helicopters, with 2 pararescue men in each, and I was the team leader on our bird, and then there was another team on the other bird. But the plan was for our bird to land and do the rescue. So we flew in, and I'm up on comms, and I'm listening to the chatter from the A-10s and from people on the ground, and they're like, known enemy position, or known enemy 500 feet from the LZ, and I'm like, I'm just thinking, there's no way they're going to send us into this, right? They've already lost a helicopter, and I remember being nervous and thinking, and I remember thinking, I'm like, am I more nervous that they're going to send us into this, or that they're not going to send us into this, right? Because we knew Marcus needed to get out, and time was of the essence. And then over the radio, I hear, Helo's cleared to the LZ, and then it was just like, all right, time to go to work. Right.
No time.
So our intel was that there was this field where we could land the helicopter, and then the survivor would be at the 10 o'clock position. But it ended up that the landing zone was it looked like a postage stamp, and it was on the side of a cliff, just a little outcropping on the side of a cliff. And I looked and I was like, there's no way we're going to land. Like, our rotor wash was probably as big. So I was sitting on the left side, and my team was on the right side, and there's a flight engineer and a crew chief. And as we're coming in, we brown out, which means all the dust from the ground gets pulled up into the rotor wash. And so the pilots can't see anything. And I hear from the right side, stop right. And I'm like, all right, well, that's the mountain. And you could hear the tension in his voice, right? Yeah. He's like, stop right. And so we stop right, and then we start drifting, and then the gunner on the left is like, stop left. And I knew that's where the cliff was. And I was sitting and I'm looking, I'm like, I don't see any ground. And we're like I was like, we're going over the cliff. And so the helicopter pilot, his name's Spanky, because he looks like Spanky from the Little Rascals, if you look him up, said he focused on something. He saw like a plant or something and then just dumped the helicopter to the ground. And so as soon as we hit the ground, I was like, go. And we got out. And
So
and
now
it was,
you guys are just running.
so we just exit the helicopter. It's absolute chaos. Like I said, nothing's where it's supposed to be. There's dust and dirt in the air. We're on night vision goggles. There's tracer fire from the A-10s all over the place. And I look to the rear of the aircraft and I see two figures approaching the rear of the aircraft. And I'm thinking, well, this can't be our guy, because the Navy SEAL would know not to walk into the rear of a helicopter, right? Because there's a tail rotor. And
Yeah.
so I raise my weapon, and I keep thinking, good guy, bad guy, good guy, bad guy. And like, clearly I can't let them get to the helicopter. And then I notice they're both wearing Afghani garb, the white kind of man dresses that they wear. And so safety's off, my finger's on the trigger, and I see one of them's got a rifle. So I'm taking the tension out of my trigger system, and I'm like, good guy, bad guy. I'm like, please let me know.
Yeah, do something.
Right. And this was probably just seconds.
Yeah.
But, I'm just running through it in my mind. I'm like, good guy, bad guy. And then I get in my headpiece. I'm like, this is our precious cargo. And so safety off, down. I'm like, oh, well, yeah, because that would have been a different story. Like, so the good news and the bad news is we got him, but I shot him.
Yeah.
Wait, you shot him?
No, I didn't. No, I'm just saying that could have gone. So
it could have gone the other way very quickly.
this would have been a different story, right? I would have
Yeah.
been like, and then I shot him.
Got it.
So,
Okay, great. So he's not shot.
He is not
Fantastic.
shot. Right. He's
Okay.
not shot by me,
Yeah,
in
by
fact.
you.
Right.
Was he shot?
He was, he was so beat up.
Yeah.
And like,
He had a lot
I
of
remember getting him on board and just looking at him and just thinking, I have never seen anybody so tired. Like, he was just, you could just look at him and you could just tell he was just physically and mentally just done. And so we fly back to Bagram Air Force Base, and we transload him onto a C-130, and as we're getting him off the helicopter, he looks at me and he's like, hey, I want to try and walk to the C-130. I don't know if you've seen Marcus Luttrell, but he's like your size.
Yeah.
And you know my size, right? I'm like barely 5'2", 87 pounds with all my gear. Not quite.
No.
And so I look up at him, I'm like, sure, man.
Yeah.
whatever
you
like.
think, bro.
So I'm glad I didn't have to carry him. And we helped him on board, and then he told us the fate of the rest of the men of Operation Redwings, and that he was in fact the lone survivor of that operation. He told us where the bodies of his teammates were, and so we got back to base, and then we kind of reconstituted and decided that we would go back in to recover them on 2 days later, which was the 4th of July. And so once again, we were all stripped down and trying to go in as light and fast as possible. And really, this was the mission that I thought we were going to get shot down. Because they knew where the bodies were. They knew we were coming to get them. And they were pissed because we had just snatched Marcus from under their noses. And so I was pretty sure we were going to get shot down. Plus, it was like, I kept thinking of Pat Tillman's story. And this was before we really knew what happened. And that, just the kind of poetic tragedy of the story, like we go in and we get Marcus Luttrell, we save, the SEAL, and then we go back in and get shot down, and everybody gets killed on the 4th of July, right? That's so that story didn't happen, which I'm glad.
Also
so we flew back in that night and recovered Mike Murphy and Danny Dietz, and brought them back to friendly soil, and then, like I said, I was on my way out when that mission started. It's now the 4th of July, and I'm expected to show up at my internship, on July 1st, right? Because that's when all of the medical interns start. And before that launched, when we were still at Kandahar, I called him up. I'm like, I'm not going to make it. And I basically just hung up. I'm like, I'm not going to make it.
Right.
So a week later, literally, I'm like in my little white coat with my stethoscope, and I'm Dr. Appel. I'm like trying to figure this thing out and process it, and it was so weird because I was excited that we had done the rescue and that we got Marcus out, but just the sadness of all the loss of life, right? There was the 16 on the helicopter and then the 3 teammates and then it felt like for nothing really, and that really stuck with me, and I said there's got to be some sort of good that can come out of this. And then in 2007 I started doing CrossFit, and a couple of days in I look up and I see the Hero WOD board and I see Murph, and I was like, I wonder if that's the same Murph that I helped recover. And sure enough, it was. And so I looked up the workout and I was like, that sounds horrible.
Yeah.
Let me do it. And so that Memorial Day, I did Murph with the body armor that I used on the mission.
Oh.
And I thought, I did it for 2 reasons. One, I thought it would be a good way to commemorate it. And second of all, it's supposed to be with body armor or 20-pound vest. So my body armor is only like 16 pounds. So I felt like I was kind of getting away with something there.
Choice,
I'm
yeah.
like, right? And after doing it, it felt like I did something, right? Like it gave Memorial Day meaning to me. Usually Memorial Day for me, I ended up, depressed and drunk and just feeling sorry for myself. But this allowed me to exert some of that energy and kind of dedicate, some suffering to those that paid the ultimate sacrifice. And I was like, this is really good stuff. And so the next year I had the whole CrossFit gym do it together, and it was even more awesome. More awesome. It was
okay.
It was fantastic. Because of the synergy, right? Like everybody kind of working toward a shared goal, everybody suffering together and just pulling each other through. And
let's quantify the suffering too. The suffering is a mile run.
Oh yeah, right. For those that don't know Murph, I think there's a few people that still don't know it.
I still haven't tried it, so I need the review anyway.
Yeah. All right. So Murph, it was a workout that Michael Murphy used to do in preparation for deployment. He would do a mile run, he would do 100 pull-ups, 200 push-ups, and 300 squats, and then run another mile. But he would do it wearing his body armor, right? And so he called it body armor. That was the name that he gave it. And when he died in 2005, the CrossFit community was kind of just getting their feet under him, and they created this Hero WOD, and so they renamed that workout Murph. And so that's the workout. So when you're ready, you let me know. I think we're gonna all do it together.
Be a good one. It's a good one. It's an absolute smoker. I mean, there's so many people. It's become a tradition.
Yeah, absolutely.
It really has. It's taken on a life of its own. The Michael Murphy Foundation, his parents, everyone has gotten behind this thing. You've had many conversations with them. It's really become something that it's a staple.
It's an American tradition, really,
it is.
and that's really what I set out to do. Like I don't try and tell people that I made Murph or created Memorial Day, right? But I like to think of myself as like that person that took that big gob of peanut butter and put it in that chocolate cup and made that Reese's peanut butter cup, right? Those two great things that taste great together. That they're not a sponsor, by the way. Just something that brought those two things together, and then it was everybody else. I mean, I was just the catalyst to it, but then it took off because people find meaning in it and people enjoy it. And then in 2010, my wife and I moved to Tucson, and I brought Memorial Day Murph with and pitched it to our new gym, and we did it. But then created a fundraiser around it as well, and that's when I was like, this needs to be a national event, and I didn't want to do anything in Michael Murphy's name without the blessing of the family. So I got in contact with his dad, Dan Murphy, and we talked for a long time, and I kind of pitched the idea, and nobody was really doing fundraisers like that, and he said, let me see if I got this right. You want people to pay money to do Michael's workout in their own gym? I was like, yes, sir, that's exactly right. He's like, good luck with that. And I was like, all right, I'm going to take that as a yes, and we ran with it.
Cleared.
And nothing more than a Facebook page and word of mouth, and we had like 7,500 people do it that first year.
And so when they do it in their own gyms, are they filming it, posting it?
They do whatever, right?
Whatever they want.
Yeah. So it started out as a CrossFit kind of thing, but has really moved on beyond CrossFit. People are now doing it in police stations and fire stations and Boy Scouts and recruiting camps. And I was just talking to somebody and they said their boot camp does it. So it's really progressed beyond CrossFit, which is awesome to me.
But what's the broader meaning? I mean, talk about why has it progressed? Why is it the broader meaning? Why do I start the conversation here with with what's going on behind us, talking about pain and suffering? Why do we have to do that on Memorial Day?
Well, it hits a number of things that I think people find important. One is a challenge, right? It gives you a goal. It gives you something to shoot for. Two, it provides that sense of community that has been so strong throughout all of the conversations, all the talks here. Everybody kind of talks about the sense of a community and then just suffering together, plus the memorial aspect of it, right? Just suffering for those that provided us the freedom to go out and do a workout on Memorial Day, right? So many people have lost sight of what Memorial Day means. Right, it's a barbecue. It's a day, day off. Last Monday of May, and we get to drink in the middle of the day, whatever. But now, people are putting in the work and putting in the sacrifice, and then the barbecue tastes better, right? And people just put forth that effort and feel like they've accomplished something, and really that it has transcended from CrossFit to everywhere. Like. And what I did a talk here yesterday, and really what I wanted to stress is that anybody can do a Murph, right? You don't have to be a Navy SEAL to do Murph, but it helps. Yeah. But you don't have to do it RX. And so I think some people look at it and they're intimidated. They're like, well, I can't do 100 pull-ups, or I can't do this, I can't do it. Well, you don't have to do that.
Scale it down.
Right.
Scale it down.
Scale it. And so in 2021, my folks came to visit from California. My dad is 90, and I made him do a Murph because they came out to visit.
90.
Came out to visit, right?
Do
Because
that.
anybody can do a Murph, right?
That's so important for people to see.
Right. And so I had, at the time, I've got 3 girls. They're 13 and 11 now, but my twins were 9 at the time, and so Murph has become a family tradition for them.
Yeah.
So we train for Memorial Day Murph, and so I had from 9 to 90 do a Murph on Memorial Day. And so anybody can do a Murph, right? I like to say, what's your Murph?
How do you scale those things for a 90-year-old person?
For a 90-year-old, it was tricky. He's in pretty good shape, but he is 90 years old. I put him on the assault bike for a mile.
Great.
And then I had him do wall push-ups. They were actually bar push-ups, right? Because I have an adjustable bar, and he did push-ups against the bar. And then for the pull-ups and squats, I got creative. I have a set of rings, and so he would lower himself onto a box.
Yeah.
And then, so that would be like the squat, and then he would do like a ring row to lift himself up and stand up.
Yeah.
And I forgot what the numbers were. And then I had him finish a mile on the assault bike again.
Cool.
It was awesome. I said, Dad, how was that? He's like, it sucked. I'm like, good.
Good.
You did it right.
You did it right, yeah.
You did it
Supposed
right. They haven't come back to visit for Memorial Day, but that's fine.
I've probably had it prior
It's
engagements.
right. Yeah, they're busy.
I'm sure they wanted to come.
Right. So from 9 to 90 really is my point, and that's what I asked and try to emphasize here is that, like this crowd, most of them can probably do it, but I asked them, be the ambassador and say, look, you don't have to do the whole thing. Just get out there and do something.
Yeah.
Right? Don't be intimidated by it. Be a little intimidated by it, because then it pushes you. But just do something, and then next year do a little bit more.
Well, the goal is you got to get out there on Memorial Day. You got to get involved with do Murph. If you haven't, now's the time. I'm going to do it this Memorial Day.
Fantastic.
I tend to make these commitments when these topics seem to come up on the show, and I pay for it
sure
later.
Do.
but as you
good for you.
Yeah, as you know, I'm up for any challenge,
Yeah.
so it doesn't matter. I might have to scale it, but we'll give it a go.
That's
I still got
right.
a couple months to train, so I
Right.
actually don't think I have to scale it. So
What if
Okay.
Maybe the
nobody at your
pull-ups.
gym does it, or you just train at home? How does someone just drop in, get involved? Is there a website then?
So there's the official Memorial Day Murph workouts now called the Murph Challenge. It's run by the folks at Forged. The owner is ex-Navy SEAL. He was a teammate of Michael Murphy. So once we got it started, my wife and I ended up spending weeks like stuffing T-shirts into envelopes, and we had just had twins, and she's like, we can't keep doing this.
Yeah.
And so we ended up transitioning and handing off the whole enterprise to Forged. So you can do that, and they have a training site. So I think it starts on April 1st, and they're like training day one, and do this and do that. And so if you
Not
want
that
to,
far past that.
right?
Yeah.
And so
you can
if
start any time in the month, right?
and you can start anytime. Our girls start April 1st as well. So every Sunday we do Murph training until Memorial Day, and that's just a way for me and my wife to teach them about sacrifice, about pushing through things, about things that are bigger than them. And so there's lessons in there that hopefully will stick with them, and it just allows them to push themselves. And
Yeah.
so
Well, Josh, thanks for joining us. Thanks for
course.
everything you're doing. Thanks for creating this opportunity for so many. All right, and bringing everyone together on an important day, and an important part of our history in Afghanistan, where so many were lost. We owe it to them to honor them, never forget, and continue to get out there and suffer on their behalf as much as we can.
right,
So thanks.
awesome. Thank you
Suffer
so
for
much.
good.
Yes, thanks.
American Jedburghs went out to form the foundation of the United States Special Forces and the Special Activities Directorate of the Central Intelligence Agency. Thanks for listening to the Jedburgh Podcast. I'm your creator and host, Fran Racioppi. Join us next week for a new episode on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Check us out on YouTube for full episodes, highlights, and other behind-the-scenes content. If you like what you heard, give us a like and leave a review. Follow me, Fran Racioppi, Talent War Group, and our sponsor Jersey Mike Subs on LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, or Twitter. Send your comments and inquiries to media@talentwargroup.com. As a former member of Special Forces, the Jedburgh Podcast donates a percentage of all proceeds to the Green Beret Foundation, supporting America's Special Forces and their families. Thanks for joining us on this episode. How you prepare today determines success tomorrow.